Across the barren training grounds, a call for skilled marksmen went unanswered. Recruits stood tense, afraid to volunteer. Then, without warning, the farthest steel target 1,200 yards away split cleanly in two. Dust swirled. The lone woman set down her rifle calmly. She didn't seek applause. Under the blinding sun, recruits gathered for a make-or-break test of precision and composure. Their commanding officer, a decorated veteran, barked, "Hit your target or leave." The recruits fumbled nervously with their rifles. Among them stood a woman near 40, wearing an unmarked uniform listed only as an observer. Technically, she wasn't even allowed to shoot. The younger men whispered skeptically, "Secretary, assistant, maybe just here to watch." The officer ignored her, focusing on the jittery trainees. When he demanded, "Who among you believes they're exceptional?" Silence fell. Then crack. A single, perfect shot. The farthest plate shattered in half. The officer stormed forward, furious. "Who fired that weapon?" She said nothing, reloading methodically. The recruits stared, stunned. He approached, anger giving his words a dangerous edge. "Asked you a question?" She met his eyes for a moment, then looked back toward the horizon, unmoved. The field went silent, every recruit sensing this was no ordinary soldier. "You think this is a game?" he yelled, stepping close. "You're not authorized to fire? Do you even know how to use that rifle, or was that luck?" Another shot rang out. The 900-yard rotating plate vanished. The spotter's voice trembled through the radio. Direct center, hit impossible at this range. The officer stopped mid-rant, his anger replaced by awe. He steadied himself. "What's your name?" he asked, now quieter but still firm. She didn't answer. She chambered another round, adjusted slightly for wind, exhaled, and fired again. A plate at 1,100 yards disintegrated. Another perfect strike. The recruits stared, speechless. The officer stepped closer, studying her calm precision, the way her rifle seemed part of her body. "Who trained you?" he asked finally. She replied softly, "No one living." The words hung heavy in the air. She unloaded her weapon, checked it, and walked away without looking back. The recruits parted silently. The officer stood frozen, watching her footprints fade into dust. To flawless shots 3 if anyone had been counting each beyond what he'd thought possible. He picked up the still warm shell casing she'd left behind, as if it held secrets. When he finally addressed the trainees, his voice carried a reverent weight. "Remember this moment. That is mastery." But he knew none of them, including himself, would ever match it. Real skill doesn't boast, it just is. By noon, the story had spread across the base. The footage was reviewed again and again. 2 bullets, 2 impossible hits, each within seconds. The commanding officer was summoned by his superior. The older man held a classified file. "You asked about her training?" "Yes, sir." "I need to understand what I saw." The officer opened the file, most of it blacked out. "She's part of the Ghost Operator Precision Program," he said. "They don't learn, they define the limits. You teach her methods." The younger man went pale. "But that program was decommissioned." The senior officer smirked grimly. "Son, she wrote the manuals you use. She is the program." When night fell, the commander returned alone to the field. The destroyed targets gleamed faintly in the dusk. He touched the stand where she'd fired and whispered, "Respect. Pure respect." In his hand were 3 spent casings. He decided to keep them as a lesson for future soldiers. By morning, he had a plaque ordered. "Engraving?" the armory chief asked. The officer paused, recalling her silent message. "Just 2 words," he said. "Wordless proof." Weeks later, new trainees arrived, eager, nervous, unaware of what had happened. The shattered long-range target had been replaced, but above it now hung a small metal plaque reflecting the dawn light. It bore only 2 words. Wordless proof. No explanation, no history. Just those words that sparked whispers among recruits. Soon, the tale spread through barracks and training halls. A mysterious woman had appeared, outshot every expert, then vanished. Some dismissed it as legend. "No one can shoot like that," skeptics said. But veterans nodded toward the plaque. "It happened," they insisted. "I saw it." 2 perfect hits. Less than 30 seconds. The commanding officer never spoke her name again, partly because he didn't know it, partly because speaking it felt like breaking a sacred silence. During every new qualification test, when he called out, "Anyone here believe they're extraordinary?" he'd pause, glance toward the distant target, and listen for that impossible echo as if hoping she might return. Months turned into years. The plaque weathered under sun and storm, its words still visible. New instructors came and went, yet the story endured.
Right.
There was a woman, they'd tell struggling recruits, who once made the impossible look easy. They remember wordless proof. Mastery isn't noise, it's precision. Over time, the legend grew beyond the base. She became a myth whispered between generations of soldiers, a ghost of perfection, a reminder that true skill requires no applause. Memiers were told, "When you think you've reached your peak, remember her. Someone out there does better, silently." Sometimes late at night, when the grounds were empty and only guards patrolled, a single gunshot echoed from the hills, so clear and perfect that time seemed to stop. By morning, one of the far targets would bear a new hole, dead center. No shell casings, no footprints, nothing but the mark itself. Officials blamed it on wind, equipment tests, or imagination. But the believers knew. She was still out there practicing in silence, proving that perfection isn't claimed. It's shown. The plaque's message had become more than a memorial, it was a promise. A reminder that excellence exists beyond recognition, that somewhere, unseen hands guard and guide the rest. Recruits carried that story with them to their posts, passing it down the line until it turned into doctrine. Skill fades, respect remains. And sometimes, when the range lay still under starlight, an instructor would find himself staring at that far-off plate, remembering her words, her silence, and her shots that split steel and belief alike. True mastery, he'd think, never speaks, it leaves behind nothing but wordless proof.